Next, we're going to look at the Ceres Roadmap to Sustainability. This framework offers a different perspective. Porter's model was developed from a competitive strategy perspective, and the Ceres model is developed from an investor's perspective. It does address strategy, but it's much less of a focus. Ceres is a sustainability nonprofit organization that focuses its work on the investment community. They work with some of the most influential investors to advance sustainability thinking and practice throughout the economy. And so Ceres set out to develop a framework both for companies and for investors. For investors, this framework defines what areas they should examine when judging a company's sustainability program. For companies, those are the same areas a manager should address when developing and managing a sustainability program. The roadmap is organized into 4 categories: governance, stakeholder engagement, disclosure, and performance. Across those categories, the framework defines 20 specific expectations for corporate sustainability leadership. Ceres calls it a roadmap, and that name's very well chosen. It's a practical, useful tool for planning and implementation. It defines the general categories to address and the very specific actions to take under each. So you meet a very strong and very credible standard for sustainable business. Now let's take a brief look at the 4 categories and some of the expectation of what's required to meet them. We'll start with governance. Arguably, this is the category that first set the Ceres model apart. As I mentioned, this is a framework that's rooted in the investor perspective. In good governance, the structure and process for directing how corporations are controlled and decisions are made is an important focus for investors. One of the expectations in this category is formal board oversight of sustainability issues. That can be a board committee focused on sustainability, or it can be the responsibility of an existing board committee. But the model makes the expectation clear. Sustainability issues should be addressed at the highest levels of the company, at the board level. In addition to the board level, the governance category also calls for sustainability issues to be addressed at the management levels of the company, from C-suite to business unit heads to managers across the company. For example, it asks for compensation plans to include sustainability criteria, and it calls for the company to take very clear positions on public policy issues, and that lobbying for those issues is to be done in an open and transparent manner. The next category is stakeholder engagement. The first expectation here is that the company will conduct a materiality assessment process. Materiality is an important concept in sustainability, and we're going to take a detailed look at it in our next module. For now, we can define it as the way companies decide that of all the social and environmental issues they face, and there's always a long list of issues, which of those issues are high priority or material issues. A materiality process helps avoid things like a technology company highlighting their philanthropic program to support education, and meanwhile, never addressing the issues like labor practices or waste management in their supply chain. Another expectation is stakeholder dialogue. This is also a topic we'll discuss in detail later in the course. Ceres calls for the company to engage multiple and diverse stakeholders who understand and represent its material issues. So it's not just company executives sitting in a conference room working out solutions. They're talking with, listening to, and at least in part, responding to the perspectives of external stakeholders. And this framework calls for companies to include sustainability issues and how they're managing them in their ongoing communications with investors, during analyst conferences, meetings, and more. The Ceres framework also emphasizes collaboration. The expectation is clear that companies should work together with multiple sectors, with civil society, with governments. It's another key concept that we'll cover in detail next week. The next category in this framework is disclosure, which is all about communicating with stakeholders in a very transparent way, specifically to provide relevant, accurate information on the material issues in a clear and consistent way that provides context that helps stakeholders understand and interpret that information. To say that all a little differently, don't just tell us the good news on an issue that's not a priority. Don't just tell us this year's results without some context. You can't judge a result without knowing the goal. So for example, let's say we used 10% less energy last year. Is that a good result? Well, if the goal was 7%, it's good. If the goal was 17%, not so good. How much did we save last year, and what are the actions we took or didn't take, or actions we took that didn't work that drove the result? It's the same contextualized conversation a company has regarding its financial results. They provide investors with the scope and content that help them make an informed assessment of their actions as a company, and in this case, their actions in sustainability. Series also asks that the company's communication meet an external standard. They specify the Global Reporting Initiative, GRI. GRI has come up a couple of times now. It's an important concept, and we'll cover that topic more in week 4. As I mentioned, Series approaches this with the investor and financial community as a priority. So this framework specifically calls for companies to include sustainability information in financial reports. The goal is to get investors talking about the interdependence between the social, environmental issues and the financial issues. And finally, this framework calls for verification and assurance, a third party reviewing the disclosures and verifying their accuracy. Once more, a comparison to the investment model helps. Companies report their financial results and publish financial statements. Those results and those statements are reviewed and verified as accurate by a third party to ensure that shareholders get the financial information that's accurate and reliable. Sustainability communication is trying to mirror that approach to ensure that stakeholders get the information that is accurate and reliable. The last category is performance, and this category covers the activities the company performs to conduct its business. Operations are the basic activities of operating the business. Things like taking actions to minimize energy use and greenhouse gas emissions, ensuring human rights in all internal company facilities. Supply chain requires the company work with suppliers to be sure the same standards are met in suppliers' facilities. Transportation and logistics focuses on maximizing the efficiency of transportation activities, to use low-carbon methods to minimize emissions from business travel and even commuting practices. Products and services address the design, production, delivery, and disposal of a company's product. And employees addresses diversity in hiring practices and providing a work environment and incentives for employees to engage and advance sustainability practices. So, did you get all that? It's a very detailed roadmap. This framework is a simple and practical tool for managers. Those 4 categories and those 20 expectations make it very clear what specific steps to take to develop and operate an organization at a best practice level in sustainability. It's an excellent resource.